In Western Asia, between the Mediterranean, Caspian and Black Seas, there is a lush, warm plateau coated with dense forests, dramatic mountains and sun-baked plains. It is a land of isolation, yet also of great allure and beauty. It would be called Eden, the earthly paradise by some, believed to be the birthplace of humanity and the realm of the gods. Yet, since time immemorial, it had been inhabited not by deities, but by the tribes of Armenia, ancient by those we would call ancient, yet altogether quite ordinary. They lived on the lands their forebears had loved, yet the times in which they could call those lands their own were few and far between. The beauty and timeless atmosphere of their realm made it the perfect jewel in the crown for any empire. At the dawn of civilization it was the Hittites. Later, yet over 1,000 years before our story begins, it was the Assyrians. Under a constant yoke, the tribes banded together into the Kingdom of Van, called Urartu by its foes, led by the stubborn Orontid family. It was not enough. The Orontids called themselves kings, but bowed beneath sword and spear to a fresh batch of Assyrians, then the Medes, then the Achaemenids, then the Macedonians, then the Seleucids. Whatever Armenia was, it had only been known by the names of the greater realms it served for most of its history. But Armenia was something. It was its language, its food, its god, its land, and its peoples. They knew that they were not Persian or Iranian or Greek, even if parts of these cultures had been stamped onto their own over the centuries. They were Armenian, and what exactly that meant they would decide for themselves as a free state. One day. The fire would almost go out before bursting back into a raging inferno, only to burn itself down once more. It just so happened that it was not the fire that they needed, but the ashes. In the aftermath of an attempted revolt against the rule of the huge Seleucid Empire, their overlord Antiochus the Great decided to place one of his own men on the shadowed Armenian throne, a vassal general who had served his court well and was of Armenian royal blood himself, Artaxias. It was the wrong choice. Artaxias may have been a servant of the Hellenites by profession, but he was a revolutionary by nature. He had seen what empires do, not just to Armenia but to all corners of the earth they claimed. He knew even back then that history was repeating itself endlessly, and that times of peace were mere chance escapes from the gaze of the insane, the self-deifying, and the heartless. As he was ascended to vassal king of his ancient people, an irony of history granted him a unique opportunity. From the west there was constant talk of the Romans, a new empire, an empire that was crushing kingdoms, tribes, and rival empires alike. The Seleucid gaze turned to Greece, to Italy, to Africa, watching in fear for the banners of crimson and gold that might spell their doom. They did not notice that Artaxias had stopped paying his tribute. They did not notice that their minders had been barred from the court at Yevandashat. Armenia had not slipped through their fingers, but it had prized them open and taken flight. It was not yet out of reach, but the long dormant wings beat mightily. Artaxias raised an army and marched to the east, for his kingdom was incomplete. Plenty of Armenians lived in the realm of Media Atropatene, the remnants of Armenia's conquerors from centuries past. To signal the Armenian ascendancy, he would defeat this historic foe and extend his realm to cover all of Greater Armenia. His call to arms stirred the 100 fiefs of Van into action, and the cheers of celebration that the Greeks would take their coin no more echoed down the great valleys. Too loudly, perhaps, for Artaxias had not even finished mustering his army before the dusty old Achaemenids were treading on Armenian soil once again, ready for battle. scouts weren't lying then. They moved fast. I think Antiochus made sure they got wind of the mustering. Could be spies in our ranks. What do you think, Sin? Oh, I was never cut out for spying. Don't worry about me. Easier said than done. I trust you have a plan for me. A plan? I rather thought that was your thing. You're my chief advisor, are you not? Advise me. Well, as you wish, my lord. My, it's like the wife never left with all these orders flying around. Well then, I'd say the enemy fancy their chances. We should draw them down to meet the boys, I think. Right. Best have yourself say something a little more cunning in the chronicle. Or better yet, just say that I read their strategy and ambushed them. Not even that far from the truth, to be fair. Keep up then. I was about to write all that down. Come on then everyone, follow the king! Don't mind me, I dropped my tablet. I'll be right with you. This is where it starts then, our first test. If they think my Armenia's anything like the one they conquered, they're in for a nasty surprise. Welcome then to Wings of Eden, an Armenia campaign with a few special rules that I'll mention in the description and as they become relevant in the videos. As you can see, we're getting things started on the first turn with a battle against Media Atropatene. Things got started with a skirmish phase where the enemy skirmish cavalry came to attack my skirmishers. They're going to fare badly just because we outnumber them, but that said, they do have one advantage, and that is that we can't stop them with melee infantry. Our composition in this army is not very good, suffice to say. It's all skirmish infantry, meaning that when the enemy's light cavalry just ram into the front of our line, it routs our units, as you can see. We'll still be able to win overall. We just won't absolutely annihilate them like we would if you could put a shield wall out in front and just halt the enemy in their tracks before wiping them out. We've got some cavalry of our own. Some of them are horse archers and they're currently running to the other side of the map. This is a purely distractionary move. I thought that by sending these men to the back of the map the enemy would split their force, and indeed they did, because some of their units went to pursue them, thus taking the pressure off of our very weak central position. We managed to repel all of the light cavalry attacking us at first, but that was only just in time to start fighting the infantry. The infantry will pose even more of a threat because once they get into melee, we'll just have a straight up melee disadvantage even against these trash spear units, and our skirmishers are going to have to work very hard to stay alive. Also working hard to stay alive are these horse archers who, as it turns out, aren't quite fast enough to escape the enemy's light cavalry, although to be fair it's probably more because of their bad skirmishing AI that they can't escape. They probably can outrun them in a straight line. Anyway, so we're gradually losing those horse archers, but we are still keeping half the enemy's army out of the fight, and that's invaluable. The enemy's heavy cavalry with their general are starting to press into our skirmishers. That could be dangerous, but we can do the same thing back to them. We've got Artaxias with his royal cataphracts, an extremely powerful cavalry unit, and now we're going to come around to the back of all of the guys engaging our skirmish line and just take them out. We can easily rout the low-level spearmen using this method, so while the melees didn't go very well, we'll still win in the end. The skirmishers just sacrificed themselves as a distraction so that we can not only use our cataphracts to break the enemy, but then use our archers to shoot into the back of the enemy as they slowly retreat to get loads of kills. Our horse archer distraction plan is slowly coming to an end now, as more and more of these guys decide to commit to melee. Even when they're on skirmish mode, if an enemy unit gets too close, they will start engaging in melee anyway, and they're going to lose in this case, so most of our horse archers end up dying because of that whole scheme. Our cataphracts go to engage the enemy skirmishers, who were just sitting around in the centre of the map, since they were trying to chase our horse archers, failing and just generally weren't doing anything. So one unit engages a set of slingers, another set of slingers in the background there is going to be engaged shortly. The enemy's general comes over to fight here with Artaxias, but I think his cavalry is a bit worse than mine, and they've already lost a number of men when we attacked them earlier, so we'll leave that melee to just churn away. The fight over here is a little bit hairy. As you can see, our skirmish troops are just being defeated by one or two low-level spear squads. However, we can surround them because we have more total units. So Some guys just hold on in the front to distract the enemy again, a few of our skirmishers go around to attack the spears from behind, and because they're only trash units, their morale is low enough that a situation like that can be enough to defeat them. Undefeatable, apparently, are the enemy's slingers. They were doing really well in the melee against my cataphracts, and I think in retrospect it's just because I'm playing on hard difficulty and you're not meant to in this mod, because the mod changes the way stats work. I think it's the same as Divide et Impera, where higher difficulties just kind of break the way the game's combat calculations work, so that's why the cataphracts are considered an even unit with slingers in melee. We'll have to try and sort that out. At the same time, our other cataphracts under Artaxias are still fighting with the enemy general. They've almost defeated him. Now our backup cataphracts will be able to come over and provide backup, funnily enough, but the enemy general routs at about this point, and that's going to signal the end of this battle. The rest of the enemy's army has either already routed or are just scattered all over the place, their formations completely obliterated, as is mine to be fair, as I try to pursue enemy units. But overall, now that our cataphracts are free, we can just hunt down the remaining enemy squads and gradually rout them all, and that's going to be the end of this battle. Only a close victory, because the better part of our army did see hefty casualties, since we never really got any good engagements apart from the ones with the cataphracts. But still, we've done the job. Only one unit of skirmishers lost in total, the enemy lost a few units and overall lost more than double what we lost in terms of numbers. And of course, we're in our own territory, we're also recruiting, so at the start of the next turn, we'll suddenly have the overwhelming advantage. The invasion has been successfully defended against, and we can even use Attila's good old take on troops feature to get ourselves up to strength a little bit faster. The only thing I was recruiting was horse archers, so our composition is still pretty bad even after getting our army up to full strength. Still, enough to easily defeat the remnants of that invasion, giving Artaxias a nice level up. Then we'll slightly change the composition as we prepare to move east, ready to liberate the remaining part of Armenia that's still under Atripotene's control. So, right after the battle, I told Machares that you'd defeated 10 Medes in single combat. Just wanted to see his reaction, you know? See whether he'd scoff at it. I don't think Machares can really speak for the common Armenian. Maybe not, but he certainly speaks to them. On the way here, I heard the washing girl boasting that you'd defeated 50 Medes. And did you correct her? Yes, of course. Set the record straight at a nice round 100. Something so much more believable about 100 than 90 or 110, I always thought. We'll see. Armenia's been held in the dirt so long, I think any good news at all is a step in the right direction. Once people start to feel free, feel Armenian properly, we'll be in business. They always did, my lord. I told you back in the good old days, didn't I? You were the greatest liar in the academy, according to my old minder. Or the only one who knew the truth. Yes, I think the changing times will prove that nicely. That aside, I wanted to ask you about the replies from the other kings. Nothing you'll want to see yet. If we can prove that Antiochus can be kept at bay, maybe they will be willing to see your intentions for what they are. Let's hope so. For the sake of all our peoples. Our goal is to take Pater-Karan from Media Atropatene because it is the final part of the province of Armenia, so even just for purely gameplay reasons we have to take this place to have a stable home province. Now in normal Attila we could just storm in and take it instantly, but in ancient empires all of these settlements have walls, so our army, despite being much bigger than the enemies, can only get a bit of an advantage on the balance bar. We can't just auto-resolve our way in. In fact, for the first turn we need siege equipment, so we can't auto-resolve at all. We had a peaceful turn building some siege equipment, and when we come back to the siege, we've now got a bit more of an advantage, and it possibly is auto-resolvable here. However, I was aware that this is probably a lot more difficult than the balance bar is saying it is because of our composition and because of how difficult it actually is in reality to capture walls and gatehouses. So we're going to be sporting and give this one a go manually. Everything revolves around whether we can get past the walls. Our army has so much cavalry in it who can't do anything until the gates are open, that it's going to be down to our limited number of attacking infantry units to decide the entire battle for all intents and purposes. Our horse archers can snipe at men on the walls, although that's not terribly effective. It's down to these guys here to make something happen. We've got a couple of units of Armenian levy spears. They're being shot by the tower with fire arrows, but because I've attacked while it's raining, the ladders are difficult to set on fire, so we easily get up to the wall. However, you might be forgiven for forgetting that this is not Rome 2, it's Attila, and in Attila, when you capture towers, they explode, and the explosion kills your own men. So in effect, we can't take these towers, even though they're unguarded, for free. We have to sacrifice these units to do it, because we have to stand in the area where you die in order to take them and capture the gatehouse to allow our cavalry into the city. And that's exactly what we do. Both units of spears are devastated, one of them routs, the other one's basically dead, so we can't use it anymore. And that's most of our melee force gone. With that, we've got the gate, but our ability to attack the interior of the town is now limited by the fact that we're going to have to attack with pretty much just ranged units, and the enemy may be able to respond to this and just keep us out. I started firing a few arrows over the wall now that it was safe to come close, and we can snipe a few enemy cavalry by doing this, but it's not going to be terribly effective. I needed to bring all of the horse archers into the city to shoot at closer range and without so much obstruction, which somehow I was able to do successfully. The enemy cav just stood there and didn't challenge me for a long time, but finally, when they were getting weak, they finally said, you know what, we will attack these horse archers, and now we're in trouble because the horse archers are terrible in melee, their back is quite literally up against the wall, so we can't get away. We're forced to fight the enemy's melee cavalry. What we can rely upon is some shooting into the melee action, where the other units that aren't engaged will just shoot in and kill both sides, but the enemy will die more, or at least their casualties matter more in this situation, so friendly fire isn't much of a concern. And this works in the end. While our unit was heavily damaged, the enemy unit routed, and that's their commander as well. With that, we're free to take the victory point because the rest of the enemy army's up on the wall, so we do just that, and then sit waiting for the timer to run out, so we'll win on victory points. The enemy respond though, they send one of their units to try and take the point back. It's spearmen, so strong against all of the units I've got holding the point, however we're on horses so we can run away. If you're wondering what the rest of my units are doing, by the way, it's nothing. They're just waiting there because this is keeping the defenders on the wall locked on us. They're waiting for us to attack the wall and not taking the victory point back. It's a little bit of an AI exploit, really. Now, long story short, this one unit was unable to take the point back. Whenever it stood on it, it would start running off the point again because we were kiting all over the place, and eventually we win on victory points. So there you have it. It wasn't that hard after all, thanks to a bit of nice manual resolve antics, and Armenia is now all ours. I bring you gifts and an offer from the new free kingdom of Armenia. If you are free, then I am free, friend. Armenia and Media are alike in that our people respect our masters and are respected by them in turn. You're wrong. Firstly, I am not your friend. I now represent the spirit of the Armenian people, and it is awaking more every day, remembering more every day, remembering what Achaemenids and Medes did to our forefathers. Secondly, your master, Antiochus, might have put you on the throne, but he isn't here today, just as he wouldn't be there for me if the situation was reversed. Every man who doesn't realize that is doomed. You've let the thieves in your midst clip your wings, scion of Atrapetes. You came here only to practice your Greek rhetoric on me, then. I thought we were to speak of peace. Then speak. For what price will you join me? Join? You speak of cruel masters through the same mask they wear. I speak of unity against those masters. I would have all from village chief to king know that their sovereignty is guaranteed by the might of my army. I do not see might. Antiochus has might. He will crush you, and I will not be chained to your corpse when that time comes. Sounds like I'll have to come back with the Armenian people to show you the strength of unity. We're done here. Now's probably a good time to explain what my goal in this campaign actually is. What I want to do is try and achieve the minor victory condition, which is to capture Armenia and all of the surrounding provinces, without actually holding territory that isn't in Armenia, with Armenia being defined as the province of Armenia, and two of the regions to the west, those two smaller kingdoms you can see there, which are also Armenian but have been split off by the Seleucids as part of their administration. In order to achieve this, I need to try and make friends with my neighbours, or if I can't, I need to subjugate my neighbours. So that's the challenge. Hopefully it'll make things a little bit harder and act as a handicap as we play the opening of the campaign. We can get started with an example of that right now, actually, because we can go to the capital of Commagene in one turn and just attack it. Their army is still dead from our victory earlier. This time we have a really strong advantage on the balance bar, despite the garrison inside being bigger, I think, than the previous one we fought. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so this time we'll just make some siege equipment and wait till the next turn. In order to fully control that region, I'll have to contend with the Seleucids, but we'll wait until much later to deal with that issue. Right now, here's the next turn. We can just give ourselves an auto-resolve. I went with the protective stance, thinking our army's mostly ranged units, so that will give us a good auto-resolve. But as it turns out, it's actually quite bad. We lose a whole load of horse archers, and all of the other units are damaged as well. We even lost quite a few of our cataphracts. I think the game might be treating them as a horse archer unit that's just really good in melee, rather than the other way around. Anyway, but we won, and now we're going to be able to subjugate this area because we're not classifying it as part of Armenia, so we're not allowed to just take it. And there we go, we've got ourselves a puppet state. Commagene will now fight for us and provide us with some additional security. If anyone declares war on us, we can force their army to come and fight for us. It does rely on the AI actually doing it, but you never know. In theory, this can allow you to be very strong, since the AI cheats and gives itself extra armies off just that one region, so it'll be quite strong despite its small size. After that, I was able to negotiate a defensive alliance with Ardan to our northeast, further securing our border, but perhaps more importantly, completing a mission that we had called the Seleucid Threat. I was looking for the completion message here. It doesn't appear until the start of the next turn. And while it doesn't actually say in the thing that pops up saying we completed it, what this does is it gives our entire faction a buff called Armenian Independence. Now that we've secured our borders a bit, it appears we truly have broken off from the Seleucids and we're in a somewhat secure position. I think this boosts our public order for ages, like 30 turns or something, and it might increase our income as well. So now we're on the up and up. We get a new mission which involves conquering all of the province of Commagene to our south. As I said, that would mean contending with the Seleucids, so we don't want to jump right into that right away, and the bonus you get for doing that mission isn't all that much, so we won't pay too much attention to that. We might inadvertently do it later. What my next focus will actually be is Caucasia. What I want to do is either ally with or subjugate all of those three factions that control the province of Caucasia along our northern border. We've already allied with Arden, as we saw, and when it comes to Iberia and Colchis, there's a nice relationship we can exploit. Iberia hates Colchis, so what we'll do is declare war on Colchis as part of a deal with Iberia to improve our relations. We can't ally with Iberia because they're at war with Ardan, but they might just give up on that at some point, and now we'll have good relations and be able to get in there once the time comes. And in the meantime, we can go and subjugate Colchis, so in theory, this plan will allow us to secure our northern border according to the challenge run rules and capture one of the victory provinces along the way through our allies. A promising start then, although we will see that this plan proves to be significantly harder to implement than I thought it would be, which can probably also be said for the whole challenge run, especially when the Seleucids get involved. So I hope you'll join me for the continuation of this campaign to see how it goes. Thank you very much for watching the first episode of Wings of Eden. This series will be coming out every week from now on, so stick around and be subscribed to see the updates. A very special thanks, as always, to all of the Officially Devon patrons who make everything on this channel happen. You can join them via the link in the description. I'll see you next time.